Hello friends, let us now learn some important points about pharmacodynamics. In the pharmacodynamics, first we will have to learn about the affinity of the drug. Affinity is the tendency of the drug to bind to a target is affinity. Affinity is tendency of the drug to bind to a target is called as affinity. Dose required to bind to a target, that is the minimum amount of dose which is required to bind a target, is affinity. Then efficacy. Efficacy is the maximum clinical effect which is produced under controlled conditions is called as efficacy. It is the maximum clinical effect produced under controlled condition is efficacy. Then we have potency. Potency is the relative dose of drug required to produce a particular effect. The amount of drug which is required to produce a particular effect is called as potency. Potency is inversely proportional to the dose of the drug. Now, we have, for example, if you see 10 milligrams of drug A, it binds to 100 beta 1 receptors and produces increase in heartbeat of around 30 heartbeats per minute. Then second drug, 20 milligrams of drug B, also binds to 100 beta 1 receptors and it increases the heart rate by 50 beats per minute. So if you see, the drug A here requires only 10 milligrams. So the minimum dose which is required to produce a target, which is minimum tendency to that, see, first drug A, we will see drug A has the tendency, that is 10 milligrams of drug A can bind to 100 beta 1 receptors. So the affinity is the tendency of a drug to bind to a target with the smallest dose. So 10 milligrams can bind to the target. So that means the drug has highest affinity is A. A has highest affinity. Then the 10 milligrams of drug is producing 30 beats per minute. That means if 20 milligrams of drug A produces 60 beats per minute. So obviously relative dose of drug required to produce a particular effect, which is potency, is also high in drug A. Then if you see the efficacy, efficacy is maximum clinical effect produced under controlled condition. Among both these, maximum clinical effect is produced by 20 milligrams of drug B. So this is drug B is producing maximum clinical effect, so it has highest efficacy. So that is the main thing here. Drug B is producing maximum effect, that is 50 beats per minute. So that means it has highest efficacy. Right. Now, the next important thing is about the dose response curve. In dose response curve, we have two important things. First, graded dose response curve and quantile dose response curve. In graded dose response curve in an individual is calculated and the dose response curve of an individual is graded. Then in quantile dose response curve is the dose response curve which is present in a population. Here the response of quantile dose response curve is in binary, that is either yes or no. Based on the response we give this quantile dose response curve. So if you see here, we will plot the quantile dose response curve in a graph. So in the graph, the y-axis shows the response and x-axis shows the dose. Y-axis response and x-axis dose. So if you draw a curve, it will look sigmoid in shape. Then in this, the dose required to produce produce good effect in 50% of population is called as median 50, that is 50% response. The dose required to produce 50% of response is median ED50. So if you see, we have some terminology: median, ED50. ED50 is effective dose 50. This is the dose required to produce effect in 50% of population is median ED50. Then we have median TD50. or toxic dose 50. So the dose required to produce toxicity in 50% of population is median TD50. That is the dose required to produce toxicity in 50% of population. Then we have median LD50, that is lethal dose 50. This is the dose required to kill 50% of animals is median LD50. This median LD50 will describe the toxicity. Then we have to learn about one important topic, which is therapeutic index. Therapeutic index is equal to LD50 by ED50 is the therapeutic index. That can be called as LD50 is the toxic dose of the person by potency. ED50 tells us about the potency. So toxicity by potency is therapeutic dose. This therapeutic dose is a measure of drug safety toxicity, drug safety range toxicity, right? So these are the important points about dose response curve. So we will draw a dose response curve with x-axis being the log dose, whereas y-axis being the response. So there are three curves which I am going to draw here, which is A, B and C curve. So in this curves, starting from A, B and C curve, so this is the response. Here we have log of dose. So here efficacy of the curve is equal to B more than A more than C. Efficacy is the maximum clinical effect produced by the drug. Maximum clinical effect is produced by B, followed by A, followed by C. Potency is the minimum dose required to produce a particular effect. A can produce it with least amount of dose, whereas followed by B, followed by C. So A has most potency, followed by B and followed by C. Then if you see, efficacy and potency can be compared even if the target has been different. But for comparing affinity of the drug, target of the drug should always be same. So this is one important thing. I will give you an example for this efficacy and affinity also. So I am drawing one more dose response curve with response on y-axis and log dose on x-axis. I am drawing three curves for three different drugs. First curve, which is A curve, is given for enalapril. Then B curve is for captopril, C curve for nifedipine. Then this is response log dose. So if efficacy of the drug is equal to B more than C, efficacy is more for captopril followed by enalapril followed by nifedipine. Potency is more for enalapril followed by captopril followed by nifedipine. If you see the affinity can only be compared for captopril and enalapril, because both these, that is the tendency of these enalapril and captopril to bind to ACE inhibitor. These are ACE inhibitors to bind to its ACE angiotensin converting enzyme receptor. Receptor present on the angiotensin converting enzyme is affinity. Because both these are similar drugs, we can compare A and B, but C being a calcium channel blocker, we cannot compare it with these drugs. So affinity is enalapril more than captopril. Next, the next important thing is we have one more dose response curve, which is showing the response of A. Then these are the three curves which I would like to draw. So if you see the curves, the curve A and B are producing maximum response, so they can be called as full agonists. Because they are producing maximum response, they can be called as full agonists, whereas C is producing half or partial response, so they are called as partial agonists. So these partial agonists will compete with full agonists to behave like an antagonist. So these will compete with full agonist to behave like antagonist. Next, we have to learn about types of drug receptor interactions. So in these types of drug receptor interactions is of four types. One, we have full agonist. In full agonist, the drug will bind to the target, and then after binding to the target, it produces maximum effect. So first we have to learn about intrinsic efficacy. Intrinsic efficacy is actually a mathematical designation for effect. That means you are representing the effect in mathematical forms. That means maximum effect or intrinsic efficacy is +1 if it completely binds to the target. Then we have partial agonist. In partial agonist, the drug binds to the target and produces half of the effect, partial effect or sub-maximal effect. Here intrinsic efficacy is between 0 to +1. Then we have antagonist. Antagonist will bind to the target and produces zero effect. This antagonist intrinsic efficacy is equal to 0. This is the most common type of interaction. Then we have inverse agonist. In inverse agonist, now in this inverse agonist, the drug will bind to the target and produces opposite effect. In this inverse agonist, the intrinsic efficacy is equal to 0 to -1, where this produces minimum effect because of producing actually opposite effect after binding the drug with target. So then we have learnt about antagonism, right? It produces zero effect. We have three different types of antagonism. One, we have pharmacokinetic antagonism. This pharmacokinetic antagonism, if you see the example, it is done by drugs like rifampicin and OCPs. If you give rifampicin and OCPs, rifampicin will cause OCP failure. So it antagonizes the action of OCPs. So this is a pharmacokinetic antagonist. Then if you see charcoal and alcohol are also pharmacokinetic antagonists. Then we have chemical antagonists. These are also drugs like heparin, which has negative charge, will inhibit or antagonize is antagonized by protamine sulfate, which has positive charge. Both these, because they have opposite charges, it occurs by neutralization reaction. Then chelating agent like iron and copper. Then we have physiological antagonists. These physiological antagonists act on different receptors. For example, if you see, we have histamine, which has H1 receptor, which acts on H1 receptor and causes bronchoconstriction, whereas adrenaline acts on beta-1 receptor and causes bronchodilation. So the action of histamine and adrenaline is opposite to one another. Then we have the first type of antagonism, which is very important, that is competitive antagonism. So in the competitive antagonism or pharmacological antagonism, this competitive antagonism and pharmacological antagonism is of two types. One, reversible, and second, irreversible. In irreversible type, examples are phenoxybenzamine, aspirin, clopidogrel, and proton pump inhibitors and organophosphates are the examples of irreversible pharmacological antagonism. They are phenoxybenzamine, aspirin, clopidogrel, proton pump inhibitors and organophosphates. Then we have reversible type of competitive antagonism. These are actually most common type. Here, if you see the reversible type of competitive antagonism, here you will have a substrate A and we will have a drug B. Both these will have affinity to the receptors. So whenever the drug B binds to the substrate, binds to the receptor and does first, normally if you see here, the drug B binds to the receptor and prevent the substrate to bind to the receptor. So in such case, if you increase the concentration of the substrate, then the drug B will come out. That is, there is reversal of it occurs. That means the drug leaves the receptor and then substrate A and can bind to the receptor and produce its effects. So this causes right shift of dose response curve, and the efficacy of this competitive antagonism has no change. There is no change in maximum velocity, but potency decreases, so Km increases. So if you see, this is normally. And now same response is produced when you increase the dose of the drug. So this is in this you have increased the dose of the drug, then this is dose of the substrate. You have increased the dose of the substrate, so you produce this effect. Here Km has been increased because potency has been decreased, and whereas the Vmax is normal. If you see potency, that is the minimum dose required to produce an effect, has been decreased because of the using drug along with the substrate. Now we have non-competitive antagonism. So non-competitive antagonism, here the drug will bind to allosteric site of same enzyme. Once the drug binds to allosteric site of same enzyme, this will cause the change in conformation of the enzyme, and thus it decreases the effect. See, this drug is binding to the receptor of the enzyme, and once it binds, now the drug is binding to the allosteric site. So think of this. This is the drug, this is the receptor, this is the substrate which is binding to the receptor. But this drug is binding to a site which is other than that of receptor. So once the drug will bind to this site, now once this drug has bind to the allosteric receptor, it has changed the conformational shape of the receptor. Once it has changed the conformational shape of this receptor, so now because it has changed the conformation of that enzyme, so this will decrease the effect of the enzyme. Now if you see, this non-competitive antagonism has irreversible effect. The efficacy decreases and velocity maximum will also decrease. There will be no change in the potency, and there will be no change in the Km. So if you see, this is the one important thing, which dose response curve, that is, this is the normal dose response curve. Now if we add a non-competitive antagonist here, in the non-competitive antagonist, the efficacy of the drug decreases in the presence of non-competitive antagonist. Now this is the Vmax decreases, that is efficacy decreases whenever we use non-competitive antagonist, whereas Km has no change at all. So this is the response, and this is log dose curve. Right? Now the next important thing is about the Michaelis-Menten equation. According to Michaelis-Menten equation, velocity is equal to Vmax into drug concentration by Km plus drug concentration. Km is the Menten's constant. Km is equal to times of d. So velocity is equal to maximum velocity by 2. Km is the drug concentration at which the velocity is half the maximum velocity. Km is the drug concentration at which velocity is half the maximum velocity. Vmax is directly proportional to efficacy, and Km is inversely proportional to potency. Vmax is directly proportional to efficacy, whereas Km is inversely proportional to potency. If you see the receptors, we have now we have 4 types of receptors: ligand gated receptors, enzyme linked receptors, nuclear receptors, and G protein coupled receptors. So first we will learn some important points about ligand gated ion channel receptors. Ligand gated ion channel receptors are the fastest acting receptors. Examples of these are GABA A, and we have GABA B also, which binds to G protein coupled receptor. Glutamate, that is NMDA receptor, AMPA and kainate receptors are also ligand gated receptors, whereas serotonin 5-HT3 is a ligand gated receptor, whereas 5-HT1 to 7 is G protein coupled receptors. Then we have nicotine receptors, which is nicotine receptors is a ligand gated receptor, whereas muscarinic receptors are G protein coupled receptors. Now we have nicotinic receptors. In the nicotinic receptors, this is a pentameric structure. Then this nicotinic receptor will conduct the sodium ions, and in the nicotinic receptors we have 5 subunits of nicotinic receptors. That is, we have 2 constant subunits and we have remaining subunits. 2 constant subunits constitute 2 alpha subunits, whereas remaining subunits include beta, gamma, delta and epsilon receptors. So if you see this, these are the acetylcholine receptors. So in the acetylcholine receptors we have 2 alpha receptors, 1 gamma and 1 beta, 1 delta epsilon receptors. Acetylcholine will bind to the alpha receptors, okay, and this will allow the sodium to enter the cell. So this is ligand gated ion channel receptors. Now the second type of receptors which we have is enzyme linked receptors. So in the enzyme linked receptors we have a cell, and in the cell we have a ligand. So the enzyme is present inside the cell, and this is lined by a receptor which is present outside. This is the enzyme which is present inside, and this is the receptor which is present outside the cell. So now in the enzyme linked receptors, the ligand will activate the receptor. Ligand will activate the receptor which will activate the enzyme. So one, we have tyrosine kinase receptor. This tyrosine kinase receptor, if you see the examples are epithelial growth factor receptor, that is HER1, and HER2 receptor. Then we have vascular endothelial growth factor receptor, insulin receptor, and we have insulin like growth factor receptor. Okay, so these are tyrosine kinase receptors. Now we have Janus kinase receptors. Janus kinase receptors include growth hormone receptors, prolactin receptors, and also cytokine receptors. So Janus kinase receptors include growth hormone receptors, prolactin receptors and cytokine receptors. Now guanylyl cyclase receptors are 2 types. One, we have ANP receptor and BNP receptor. Both these will increase the cyclic AMP and causes vasodilatation. Next we have serine threonine kinase receptor. This serine threonine kinase receptor includes the transforming growth factor receptor. So these are the enzyme linked receptors. Then we have nuclear receptors. Nuclear receptors are the slowest acting receptors which are located on the nucleus. Nuclear receptors are slowest acting receptors located on the nucleus and on the cytoplasm. The nuclear receptors which are located on the nucleus are T3 and T4 receptors. Then we have vitamin A, which is retinoic acid receptors, and retinoid X receptors are present in vitamin A. And we also have peroxismal proliferator activator receptors are also nuclear receptors, that is PPAR receptors. And we have estrogen receptor and progesterone receptor are also the nuclear receptors. So T3, T4 receptors, vitamin A receptors, peroxismal proliferated activated receptors, estrogen and progesterone receptors are nuclear receptors. Then we have in the cytoplasm, we have androgenic receptors, mineralocorticoid receptors, glucocorticoid receptors and vitamin D receptors are present in the cytoplasm. Then we have last type of receptors, which is G protein coupled receptors. G protein coupled receptors are the most common target of drug. These are the most common target of drug. So these G protein coupled receptors, here this is the cell. We have a receptor here. This receptor passes through cell membrane 7 times. So it is passing through the cell membrane 7 times, and then it will bind to 3 subunits. After passing through the cell membrane 7 times, it will bind to 3 protein subunits, alpha, beta and gamma subunits. Okay, now so this is the receptor. It is passing through the cell membrane almost 7 times, and then it binds to 3 protein subunits, that is alpha, beta and gamma subunit. Now when this binds to an alpha subunit of GDP, so this is a 3 receptors and alpha, beta and gamma subunit, and this has a GDP. To the alpha subunit GDP, now in the presence of phosphate, this GDP gets converted to GTP, and now here the alpha now this is the transmembrane receptor which is present. Now the alpha subunit will separate from beta and gamma subunit and moves with GTP. So this is the alpha subunit and then beta and gamma subunits. Now alpha subunit has separated from the beta and gamma subunit. Alpha subunit has GTP and the alpha subunit has now separated from beta and gamma subunit. Alpha subunit has GTP-A's activity, which now converts GTP to GDP. So once GTP gets converted to GDP, now the alpha subunit goes back to beta and gamma subunit. So if you see, this is the receptor. So now the alpha subunit has now gone back to beta and gamma subunits. Now if we see the G protein coupled receptor, so here the most important subunit is obviously alpha subunit. Now this G protein coupled receptor can be of 2 types. One, we have G protein coupled receptor can be of 2 types. One, we have GS, second we have GQ. This GS will activate adenyl cyclase and thus it will increase the cyclic AMP. And this cyclic AMP, when it increases, it activates the protein kinase. Now once it activates the protein kinase, it has 2 things. One, it can activate smooth muscles. In the smooth muscles, it can activate the myosin light chain kinase of smooth muscles. It will activate the myosin light chain phosphorylase of smooth muscles and inhibit the myosin light chain kinase. Because it is inhibiting myosin light chain kinase, it causes relaxation. Then we also have it also has action on cardiac and skeletal muscles, that is in calcium channel, and it increases the calcium channel in the muscle, causing contraction. Then we have GQ receptor. GQ receptor will activate phospholipase C and increases phosphoinositol biphosphate. Once it increases phosphoinositol biphosphate, we have 2 things. It has inositol triphosphate is present, which is IP3, and we have diacylglycerol is DAG. So this inositol triphosphate will increase the calcium and causes contraction, whereas the diacylglycerol will activate the membrane protein kinase. So we have these are the important actions. Now beta 2 receptor or G protein coupled receptor. So whenever beta 2 receptor is activated, it causes smooth muscle dilatation. It causes smooth muscle relaxation and bronchodilation. It causes palpitations when it activates the cardiac muscles, and it causes tremors from the skeletal muscles. Now we have other types of receptors are also seen. So in the other types of receptors, we have 3 more types of G protein coupled receptors are present. One, we have GI, G0, G12 by 13. Increased alpha 1 is equal to GTP. This will decrease the cyclic AMP and open the potassium channels, causing relaxation. Whereas this G0 increases beta and gamma subunits, thus decreases the calcium, and this will, once it decreased calcium, it causes opening of potassium channel. Example of this is M2 receptor. Then we have G12 by 13. Here this will increase Rho and GTP. Thus increases Rho kinase, causing vasoconstriction. This is a Rho kinase inhibitor. Rho kinase inhibitors are G12, G13, G13 type. These Rho kinase inhibitors include Fasudil and Natarsudil. Rho kinase inhibitors include Fasudil and Netarsudil. So these are the important points about the G protein coupled receptors. Thank you for watching.